Welcome back to Ask Dad. On today's video, we're talking about job hunting and specifically finding and landing that job that you're looking for. The reason this has become important is we recently were hiring for a job, and I also know a lot of people who are looking for job positions. And the feedback that I'm getting is it's harder and harder in today's world to find a job than it was just a couple of years ago. And that tracks. If we hop into some statistics first, and this won't last long, trust me. This is from BLS.gov, and this is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And it tracks the unemployment rate as part of one of the statistics they track. And you can see historically, the unemployment rate has floated all over the place, but over the past, let's say 10 years, it's been under 5%. And more specifically, this is more applicable to a lot of younger people who are looking for jobs. If we go back to about 2018, it's hovered around 4%. And that's really, really low statistically. Now, there's a lot of talk about how the statistical analysis of unemployment is gamed, and there's some truth to that. But if we look, we see that up until about 2023, getting even into 2024, it was under 4%. And what that means is the employers have a harder time finding employees, and they're posting signing bonuses, and they're doing a lot of things to bring people in. But when it starts getting higher and higher, the unemployment rate, that means more and more people are looking for jobs. It means your competition, the people that you are competing with for a job, increases, and it makes it harder for you to find one. So I saw a few things when I was hiring for a position that made me think there are some people who don't know the tips and tricks that you can use to find a job. And maybe some of these little mistakes may be keeping you out of the job that you should be qualified for, that you should be able to get. So I wanted to walk through a few things, but the first one I want to point out, the first thing I want to touch base on is get your profiles in order, especially LinkedIn. If you do not have a LinkedIn profile, and if you're looking for a semi-professional job, something that is above your baseline McDonald's fast food entry-level employment, get your LinkedIn profile in order. And what I mean by that is make it look good. Post the accomplishments, the progression that you've made, the reasons that an employer should look at you, because honestly, employers do look at that kind of stuff. The other thing that I would say about LinkedIn is get your network in order. Reach out to people that like you, that respect you, that know how you work, and get them connected on LinkedIn. You'd be surprised how many people are connected to other people on LinkedIn, and if they have a shared connection, in my experience, they're more likely to at least look at you. They may even reach out to that person who can give you a good reference and give you an in at that job. In fact, most jobs that I have found over the years have been through my network, not through applying for positions. So it's very important to have that professional network, that professional profile on LinkedIn. But let's go through here. This is on a site called Indeed.com. In fact, we actually found our latest employee through Indeed.com. And this article puts a pretty good format on the deficiencies and the strengths that I saw when we were looking for an applicant. The first one is read over the job application. Now this seems basic, of course. You'd think that if you're looking for a job posting that you would actually read through it, but what I found is very few people actually read the job posting. They would just apply to the position. The challenge with that is I received over 40 applications for a very specific position that required very specific qualifications. And a lot of these applications as they came in were from people who had no experience in the field, no cover letter. They didn't answer any of the questions that I had asked on the posting, and they were immediate no's. And the problem that brings is, this is more from an employer side, but it actually affects the applicants. It makes me have to filter through a lot more, which means I have less time to look at each application. So read the job application. Don't just apply to everything that looks like it may reasonably be something you might be interested in. You have to apply for positions that you qualify for, because with the volume of applications that come in right now, the employers, the HR divisions, all of the people that are looking at the applications don't have time to filter through something. Now, if you may be deficient in just a couple of categories, we'll touch base on that here in a second. Number 2, use a professional name and email address. This isn't going to necessarily limit you or get you immediately disqualified, but if I'm looking for someone who is a paralegal and they are applying for a paralegal position, I don't necessarily want to see an email address that says Fuzzy Bunny 03 or some NSFW name that just isn't appropriate. So make sure you use a professional name. Your real name would usually work for that, and a professional email address. It's easy enough in today's world to get email that you should be able to create an email address for a job that has a professional standing. First last name at gmail.com is fine. Just make sure it's professional. This one's a big one. Follow the instructions. Now there's a little bit of wiggle room in this. When people are applying for a position, it's okay to go a little outside to make yourself stand apart, but you don't want to be totally outside the boundaries, because that just shows that you're going to be an employee who's not going to follow instructions anyway. So sometimes here it says the field calls for a full paragraph, sometimes it calls for a couple of sentences, sometimes just a yes or no. Make sure that you're reading the description, make sure you're reading the questions, make sure you're actually following the instructions, and then if there's something there that you need to do that sets yourself apart, do it. Something else that I've seen in here also is if the position says that they're going to review instructions or they're going to review the applications over the next month, don't try to call into the company and reach outside the boundaries and go around people, because that'll just get you known as a problem maker. If you have a connection, again going back to the LinkedIn profile, if you have a network connection or if you have a contact at the company, it's absolutely okay to reach out to them, ask them about it. And if they know the HR person or the hiring manager, it's absolutely okay for them to recommend you for that position. But it's not something you want to do to be going to the website, calling the phone number, calling different people within the company, because that's going to get you blackballed as a problem maker. There's always exceptions to that, but 99% of the situations, you need to follow the instructions. Here's a big one. Tailor your cover letter to the job. When I put out the application, I asked 2 specific questions when I was hiring on LinkedIn. I found the vast majority of people applying for the position didn't even bother to read them. The people who were not qualified, or who may not have been as qualified, didn't put anything in a cover letter, and Indeed has a spot that when you're applying for a job, you can put in a brief cover letter, or you can actually upload a cover letter. Very few people did that. There were a couple that did, and honestly, I gave those cover letters weight if they were applicable. If they made sense, I would read a short blurb on it. But the majority of people simply fired in an application. And honestly, because of the volume of applications that came in, I had to disregard all of them. So make sure you're tailoring a cover letter to the job, especially if it's a more professional job. If this is something that's a step up in your career, if it's the next step, you're trying to level up and go for a pay raise especially, you need to make sure that you are telling the employer succinctly, quickly, not taking up a lot of time, but make sure you're telling the employer why they should look at you and what makes you a good fit for them. Another brief thing to touch on this is make sure you actually know what the company does. Go to their website, find information about them online. If you know people at the company, talk to them about what's important at the company and the culture. Tailor your cover letter to that so that the company can see why you are a good fit, why they should talk to you, why it makes sense to choose you over the other 40 or 50 people that may be applying for that position. This is important. Include keywords in your resume. Now, something I wanted to touch on is when you're applying for a job, there's 2 different sides. There's a technical side, meaning you've got to be technically savvy and understand how the application process works. And there's a proficiency side. The proficiency side says, yes, you can do the job. Yes, you're the person they need to be looking at. The technical side is how you get it in front of the right person. Now, smaller employers aren't very sophisticated when they're looking at applications. An application comes in, they look at it, that's all that happens. And then they'll screen them manually. Larger companies, especially the ones that are posting high-profile jobs, they use software to screen before they use a real person. And if your resume doesn't include the keywords or the different pieces that you need to have for the job based on what they've put into the software, you'll be ignored. So when you're reading an ad on Indeed.com, there will be certain keywords that they'll put in their posting. And that it may be proficiency related. It may be, for example, if you're going for a welding position, they'll want to know the type of welding that you're going to do. They'll want to know if it's stick or TIG or MIG or whatever it is. They'll want to know if you can weld aluminum, if you can weld cast iron, whatever it is that they're looking for. Those keywords, there will be keywords in that ad. And what you'll want to do is make sure that you add those to your cover letter. You'll add those to the answers that you're putting in the posting. Make sure that you are tailoring yourself to fit their need. As as crappy as that may sound, that's what you have to do, because they want to make sure you're going to be a good fit. And good employers want to make sure they bring people on board in a way that the people can stick around, be happy, work for them long term, and not be a bad fit that leaves in 3, 6 months, or even a year. So, keywords, technical proficiency is important when you're applying for a job. Here's another one that a lot of people don't do enough, is check your responses for errors. Now, a typo here and there is probably not a big deal, but if you have a bunch of misspellings, grammatical errors, you sound like you're not proficient, especially if you're going into a position that requires technical or grammatical proficiency, you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the best light. So most browsers now, Chrome especially, has things that it will check spelling if you're typing in a text box. But what you may even want to do is go another step and type it out in Word or in Grammarly even, if you're interested in looking more and more professional. Make sure that all your misspellings and grammatical errors are correct, and then copy and paste it into the fields on Indeed or whatever application system you're in. A point that this section makes is most jobs require basic communication skills. You want to make sure that you're looking like you can meet that need. The next one is track your applications when applying for multiple jobs. From what I have been told, most people that are applying for jobs are applying for a lot of jobs because it takes a lot of applications to get noticed. So when you're tracking those, it is important, because then you're able to follow up through Indeed or through LinkedIn or through Monster or whatever the application software is that you're going through. Now, a follow-up can be a simple ping. Hey, is there any questions I can answer for you? Make sure that you're giving them something. Are there pieces of information that would be helpful in considering my employment? Things, again, that are showing them that you're not a problem employee, but you would be the type of employee that would be helpful and help bring things to their attention and help them move your position along, make yourself valuable to the company. Anything you can do on that light is always positive. So when you're tracking when you're applying for a bunch of jobs, make sure you're tracking the applications. And if it's something that you're really interested in, occasionally, not every day, maybe once or twice through the application process, follow up with the company and ask them if there's information that you can provide that will help them make a decision. Here's one that seems to be controversial if you spend any time on social media, but tidy up your social media profiles. I can tell you most hiring people that I know will look at social media profiles. Now, should that matter? A lot of people would say no. Most employers would say yes, because when you're talking to people, when you're looking at becoming an employee, they're going to look at how you represent yourself in your normal everyday life. It is important to make sure that you don't have a bunch of things on your social media profile that would make them question whether you're going to be a valuable employee or a problem employee. If you post a lot of things on your social media profile about how employers are horrible and taking advantage of the little guy and pushing them down, etc., they may not want to hire you. Now, whether that's legal, ethical, or not, that is the reality. So be aware your social media profiles can be looked at by employers. Uploading your resume. Now, a lot of people will go onto Indeed or Monster or whatever and just type in all the information, hit submit, and call it a day. Something that I find very helpful is when someone has actually included a PDF copy of their resume that I can pull down, look at, and is in a good, legible format. That becomes important because the websites are not always very user-friendly, and sometimes things go away on screen. So if I can download a resume when I'm talking to the person, it helps me keep all the information in front of me. And it's also easy to keep in my file so that when I am referring someone to the next step in the hiring process, I can send along a copy of the resume. So uploading your resume is actually important, and make sure your resume looks good and is easy to read. It's easy nowadays to go online, find different resume formats, find out what works, and we're not going to go into that in this video. But make sure that you are actually spending some time on your resume, and make sure you do include a copy of your resume in your application. And then the next thing is review before submitting. It's easy for us when we get going into the application process or filling out any information online to start and stop as we go throughout the day. Or even if we're typing a lot of information, if there's 10, 20, 15 fields, whatever there is, there's a chance that mistakes have crept in. So make sure that you review your submission before you hit that final submit button and you correct any issues. You may find something that you had talked about in one section that then you contradict in another, or that you've repeated in multiple sections. You want to make this look as professional and as easy as possible to identify you as the candidate they want to choose. Read through it as if you were hiring someone and go through all of the things that we've talked about so far. If you come across to yourself and even have someone else that you trust review your application, if you come across to the people that you know as a reliable, trustworthy person that they should hire, there's a high probability that you're going to come across that way to them as well. So that reviewing your submission can be critical. That is it for this video or for this article. The key points that I want to bring out when I was hiring people is, number one, make sure that you are at least borderline qualified for the position you're hiring for. There's no reason you can't step up, you can't level up your career, but you have to have the basic skills they're looking for. That's number one. Number two, you have to come across to the hiring company as someone who qualifies for that position or someone who can get there very quickly. Most companies don't mind training somewhat. They'll spend some time helping you level up your skills, but they don't have time to train you completely for a position you don't qualify for at all. You've got to get the baseline skills. Now, do you have to have the baseline skills in a employment position? Not necessarily. There's a lot of training courses you can take. There's a lot of online education you can get, even if it's not from a school and it's not a degree. There's courses you can take from Harvard right now on contract law that will help you get a skill level that may get you into a paralegal type position. But you do have to have the basic skills. The other thing that I can't stress enough is grow your network. Talk to people who can become advocates for you, who can help you find the job either before it goes online or can help identify you as a key candidate once it is online. Use LinkedIn as a networking skill, and then make sure that when you're posting on LinkedIn or you become active on LinkedIn, that you're not posting stuff that will make an employer view you as a problem. We should all be working together as employees and employers. Doesn't always happen, of course, but that should be the goal, is for an employee to come in, help the company grow, and get paid accordingly. If we come across as that type of person and we have the skills and we present ourselves in the best light, we then have the best chance to get the job we're looking for. I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has, please give us a like down below. If this is the type of content you'd like to see more of, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you know someone this video may help, please consider sharing. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next one.